Hello, everyone. My name is Dakota Franson. Some of you may know me as a specialist of the strange or as one of the hosts of the Bald and Bonkers Network and show. I wanted to come on here to try to answer some questions that I've been getting especially since I appeared on Elena Danaan's channel, as well as to address some other things that have come up. Now, I will apologize up front if my approach to calling out people seems to be a bit more direct than some people like. I'll be honest, I've had issues with temper in my life. I've gone to therapy to work on it, as well as a few other things. And those who have been in my life for long enough have said they notice a change, so progress. And I also wanted to address some of the people who tried to speculate that I may be a fraud. Okay. Simply because something about my story didn't sit right. I've addressed this before, but the questions keep coming, so I'm going to officially address this here, one-on-one, and do my best to keep my calm. Now, I understand some of you aren't purposely trying to come off as rude or anything like that, and I appreciate it. I understand that my statements may seem weird. I'll be honest, if I wasn't on the front lines of it, I probably wouldn't believe it. But here we are. Some of you have even mentioned that there are certain details I withheld. And you're right. Partially, the details were withheld to focus on the important parts and keep things relatively short for time. Elena and I are both busy people. Her a bit more so than me, it seems. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. She's very good at what she does and deserves all the love and respect. And it's a complete honor and a privilege to get to call her a dear friend. The reason why I withheld certain information was because, like I said, the bits of my story I shared were what's important. It's true that I did have an abduction situation where Grace did try to take me. It does seem that I do have an implant myself, and that some of the members of my old crew saved me and brought me back. But instead of dropping me off where I was directly taken, I asked if they would take me to my grandparents because I felt safe there. At the time, I only remembered fragments, thought it was just a weird dream, but my grandparents' house was about 30 miles away from where I lived at the time, mind you. I was about 5 years old. Did I say 5? Yeah, I did. Sorry, I work nights and haven't had a chance to catch up on some sleep yet. Pardon the interruption from my phone. I should really get in the habit of turning that down before I start recording. Anyway, yes, that story is true. The reason why I was targeted by the Greys, maybe it was for hybridization due to the fact that I am O negative blood. and that's relatively universal. Something I didn't share on the air was that apparently I'm not the only one, at least on my father's side, who has a history with abductions. Apparently, I have a grandmother who was also abducted by Greys, made hybrids, and was abducted further on because the offspring, I guess they would technically be my half gray aunts and uncles, if that's how that works. It was a failure to thrive, and they were needing mother's milk, apparently. So she was abducted to have her milk harvested. How much truth is to this situation, I don't know. I was more mortified at the mental images. It could very well be possible that because of the actions I took in order to leave Talihara before I came to Earth, there may have been a target on my head. Like Elena says, the Chikar have sort of organization as well as mentality that is comparable to mob movies. Except the Sikar are several times more brutal because, let's face it, most mobsters that you would think of today, they do what they can to, they don't mess with kids. Most, not all. There's some truly diabolical individuals out there, beyond a reasonable doubt. But just to say, those particular mobsters would have more morals than a lot of our politicians. But moving on. The story about my daughter, how I found out about her, that's one that I've personally focused on the most. That was the most important to me. Yeah, I've seen incredible technologies, and being a tech geek, I'd be running to try to test it out the first chance I got, just to see what I can do with it, you know? I've always been kind of a tech geek, so that always interests me. But at the end of the day, when you really think about it, the heart, what's in there matters more than any sort of technology that may come. Technology changes. It breaks. It has to be repaired. But the heart, the actions of what you hold in your heart ring true, even long after your demise. Exactly what those actions may be forgotten in time by the mind, but the vibrations are forever felt. It is true that I made an attempt on my own life. After my chat with Elena, I started focusing on those self-hypnosis tips that I picked up from Tony Rodriguez's online class. No, it wasn't a one-on-one with Tony. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting the guy. It was he hosts an online class because he hates the interview process because of repeated questions. That's how he put it in the class. So he thought he put together that class so he could eliminate most of the frequently asked questions, and maybe he'll be able to reach out if he's available after you've completed it. Anyway, moving on. I focused on some of the self-hypnosis things to try to zone it on that particular day. Apparently, that blue void was a bit of a screen memory. It did happen, but towards the end of that statement, I mentioned that as the vision started to fade, I swore I saw other people gathering around me. Apparently, the blue void, where it looked like I was underwater, that was a partial mask to hide the pod. I went back to my other body. And no, this is not a sign of me trying to be deceptive. You should really learn the difference between someone trying to BS you as compared to a natural evolution to a story. Because there's a lot of you that seem to have this mentality that abductees, they just had one weird day and that's the end of the story. No. Some days I wish, but nevertheless, what's happening is happening. I was back in my pod. My family was there. My daughter, I believe my son, as well as a couple other people. One of them may be Thorhan. I'm not 100% sure. Or at least someone who had the vague likeness to him. There was a few people up there like that. And I'll get more into how Thorhan and I apparently knew each other a little later on. But a lot of people wonder why that event had such an effect on me. Because to be completely honest, for many years of my life, the idea of becoming a father scared the shit out of me. And it's not the usual, I don't think I'll be ready, or yada, yada, yada. It's the fact that I feared potentially repeating cycles that should have died a brutal death long before I came about, but they didn't. What do I mean by that? See, my father, I haven't seen him since I was about 14, 15 years old. That is because he is sitting behind bars for sexually assaulting my younger half-sister, his daughter. The police were only able to find evidence to support that the abuse had been going on for at least 7 years, but even they strongly believe that it was going on longer than that. The 7-year marker was just all they could prove in court. That was because there were Facebook messages discovered by one of our cousins detailing conversations between my father and my sister, who at that 7-year marker was due to come back from his deployment in Iraq. And a lot of these conversations indicated that the sexual relationship had started to turn consensual. That's how frequent it became. I honestly don't know. Say if one day my father were to actually get out, be released from prison, which is my understanding is not going to be the case. He hasn't exactly been a model prisoner. Not like somebody him could actually be capable of that, but I barely remember what the man looks like. I've only written to him once as kind of a final release of things I never got to say. When the court proceedings were going through, the authorities and social workers, they wanted to try to get me involved to communicate with my father, but my exact words were, put me in a room alone with him 5 minutes, I'll end this. Because the only thing more despicable than a pedophile, or a pedophile that attacks their own children, is the false accusations. And while we did speculate that some of my sister's mannerisms did kind of raise a couple questions that certain details may have been exaggerated, because of me threatening to kill my father, I was kept away from the trial, which may seem like it was for the best, but I was also barred from actually being able to visit our younger siblings, who, as far as I know, were either just starting to be targeted by my father, but nothing had happened to them yet. But still, I wasn't around. And the reason why that was because at the age of 3, my mother got full custody of me, after an incident where my stepmother stabbed me in the back of the neck with a ballpoint pen. Then when I started screaming at her, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? She grabbed me by my wrists, dragged me into the kitchen, put a 6-inch butcher knife in my hand. It says, just kept challenging me. So you want to fight back? Do it. Do it. Eventually I started to fight back. I managed to pin her to the floor. And the knife started to penetrate her skin. My younger sister, the same one that my father assaulted, she walked in on it. She was barely old enough to start walking. She must have heard the commotion, tried to walk in to see what was going on. She's too young to remember this. She's really too young to really register any real memory of it, so she'll probably try to, if she sees this, she'll probably try to deny every single word. Because, well, she's made her choice in life and tried to stir up more drama with the people that tried to help her. Happens, but that stings a little more when it's one of your own, you know? My father did have supervised custody for a while, but eventually he just disappeared, stopped showing up to these scheduled appointments. He didn't like having to be babysit. Now, my father, my stepmother, they tried to paint me out as some evil devil child, tried to say that my mom told me to do it. My grandmother was the one who had to actually get the police to physically look at my neck and see the indent from where the pen was starting to penetrate. Because obviously they're not going to believe a small kid. Granted, they probably wouldn't know how to deal with a situation like that because it's usually the kid that gets the marks, not the other way around. So much conflicting information came about this that I went to court. There was court mandated therapy, and needless to say, when the therapist worked on me one-on-one, she was very confused on what could have happened to have triggered me to reach such an extreme reaction. Well, that was until she started to bring the adults in, start to analyze the dynamic. I can prove everything I'm saying with court records that these events took place. I've even, by accident, I was just helping clean up the house, found letters that one of my old babysitters wrote up to the judge to report that, again, when I wasn't around my father, I was just like any other kid. Maybe the only thing that seemed off about me was that I was fairly tall for my age. I've just put it into perspective. Since I was 9, people thought I was old enough to start drinking. But that's another situation. And my babysitter detailed that there was a complete and total change in my behavior. Not that I was more rowdy, it was just that say I were to have an accident being a young child, I would have been expected to just kind of wallow in it, was how she put it. But to be frankly, I blocked out a lot of things that happened around my father. Probably for the best. I mean, when I was in middle school, when the trials first started, I had a substitute teacher who, for his full-time job, happened to be a prison guard, and I found out that apparently he dealt with my father. When he realized that relation, you could just tell that something happened, because he would have this look on his face like he wanted to start asking questions, but was scared to hear the answers. Either that, or didn't, being that I was in middle school, he didn't want to put me in a spot that would reveal some pretty nasty secrets to an environment where I would most definitely be targeted for bullying. Even though I was the biggest fucking kid in the school, and, well, I was just targeted just because of my size, you know? You may be familiar with the old line, you want people to leave you alone, find the biggest person you can find and knock them out. Well, my grandfather tried giving me that advice at one point. Problem was, he didn't realize that I was the biggest. Anyway. He killed me when all this went down because, you know, I was the oldest sibling. I was supposed to be able to be there to protect them, you know, help my little brothers, you know, try to get girls as they got older, you know. A young child's only concern, the only concern a young child should ever have is what color of crayon they're going to use in the picture they're drawing. Not having to worry about mommy or daddy hurting them. During the trials with my father, like I said, it was found out that there were messages on Facebook detailing fantasies that also started to indicate my sister, the abuse started to, though, becomes consensual. It was also discovered that there was at one point where my sister actually started to exhibit signs of pregnancy at 10 years old. Baby didn't take, so I guess somewhat of a bittersweet moment when you really think about it, but unfortunately, when it comes to those types of cases, nobody ever bothers to listen until the extreme comes out. And for years growing up, I understand now that the individuals who would do this had a lot of growing up of their own to do. Doesn't excuse it, but this is my attempt to try to forgive and let go. But for years, I would always hear the line, "You're just like your father." Even when, before the news about my sister broke, when the abuse was known, but to what extent wasn't. With the court mandated therapy I went through, in the file that was given to social workers, in big red letters, it was not him talking about me. It's not her talking about my mother. It's them talking about my stepmother and father. And to make things make a bit more sense, I have no full siblings. All my siblings are half siblings. If that helps me understand things a little better. So when the incident with my daughter happened beforehand, before I found out what my father had been doing. Say that took place when I was about 14, 15 years old. My daughter showed up when I was 12. Naturally, that raised a lot of questions because, well, I didn't really know how to look into something like that. What 12-year-old kid would? When I first started to notice things about me when it comes to like the psychic abilities and paranormal, I honestly thought that I was going to get to join the X-Men because I didn't realize until I was about 9 years old that this stuff wasn't quite normal. And the situation with my daughter, the only thing I could think of was that it was some sort of time travel thing because anytime I came across stories where a parent had some sort of like vision of their child, both the mother and the father, these visions would take place when the mother was pregnant, even if she didn't know it at the time. So inevitably that raised questions as well, as in if that little girl that saved my life was in fact my daughter, somebody's got some explaining to do because it wouldn't be another 2 years until I had my first kiss. So the idea that I was a father scared me because I was afraid of letting cycles repeat. It was unfortunately more often than not those who indulge in pedophilic urges. There's no excuse for it. It's disgusting and diabolical. And those trying to normalize it really need to get help. But those who have those urges were often victims themselves. And as someone who understands that type of environment, how hard it can be to try to reach out for fear of judgment, if you feel those urges, please, by God, all means, seek out professional help before you do something to destroy someone's life and destroy the lives of everyone around you. I wasn't really allowed to see my siblings during the court proceedings because they were concerned about my extreme reactions. I'm sorry, but I'm more concerned about the people who don't get pissed off at that type of news. And I felt guilty. I was big brother. I was supposed to protect my younger siblings. And to some extent, be a bit of a parental figure to them. As much as that's not fair, that shouldn't be expected of any child to have to be a parent. It inevitably becomes the case. My daughter did her best to try to show up. And it would take me many years to really kind of process the whole ordeal. And this was before I found out that apparently I also had a son and another daughter that even if I didn't have a daughter out there somewhere, just by that incident alone, just the ideals and the message behind it, I should strive to become the best version of myself I could. Because, God damn it, if I get married and have kids, I want to do what I can to be the best husband to them, be the best husband to my wife, be the best father that I can be to my kids, to be there for them through everything. And in fact, now, in trying to understand the ET side of things, if you want to call it that, I still feel that longing that I should be with them, helping them, not them helping me. With how much this affected me, even if it just turned out to be just a weird self-preservation image like some people have tried to test, I owed it to the ideal, to the hope that potentially I could rise above everything that happened. You know, get to travel, get to meet amazing people like Elena Danaan and Danny Henderson, who's going to be coming on the show here shortly. And everybody that has come on the air with Chris and I are getting to meet Chris. I didn't start to achieve the things I dreamed of that I wanted to do in this life until I started to truly embrace who I was. And by all means, if my wife and children cared about me enough to do the things they've done to try to help me through everything that's happened in life, I owe it to them to become the best version of myself, a version of that they can be proud of. In fact, the name I gave my daughter just so I had something to call her was Olivia Hope. I asked her if she liked that name. She said she did. My son is Michael Roy. Our youngest daughter is Vilena. I don't know if we picked the middle name or not. Very Earth names. But if I'm understanding things correctly, with the tall, which is what we're all descendant of, supposed to be some of the first ETs to start revealing themselves in the next couple of years. I suppose they are going to need Earth names to have everybody call them by, because they know Earthlings are probably going to screw it up. So I didn't come out about my story with Elena or anybody that I've met beforehand to try to seek fame and fortune. If that was my goal, I didn't do a very good job. I put all of my books out to as many different platforms as possible just so they're out there. And I'm having to re-examine science fiction series I wrote because I based it on a lot of images I was seeing, and a lot of those images have come true. So maybe not exactly as I wrote them, but still, this revelation that my children, yes, they are out there, and looks like one of the reasons why they look so much like me, even though they were at least the first two, maybe or at least Olivia may have been born before I came to Earth. The reason why they look so much like me is because my other body has DNA of this. And someone pointed out on the interview I did with Elena that apparently I had a resemblance to King Henry VIII. Well, I showed Elena a picture with a little comparison with Mary Stuart to show that Mary Stuart, someone who I am confirmed to be a descendant of, she actually looks just like my mother. I showed that picture to Elena, and her words exactly is that she apparently fell out of her chair. Or almost, I should say. Wasn't expecting looking into UFOs to turn into a genealogy research, but hey. My other body upstairs, you can tell that it's me. But the best way I know to put it is my body upstairs looks like my more muscular, better hair brother. I wish I had that now. Sorry. Notification, sorry. Anyway, it's possible that my DNA was directly inserted into the bloodline, so this vessel would be ready. It sounds a lot like organ transplant patients, when you really think about it, where recipients of donor organs actually start to pick up seemingly out of nowhere, like the hobbies, talents, and even memories of the individuals who donated the organ, even though they would have never met in person, had no knowledge of each other until that surgery or afterwards. So maybe that's the case. I'm still learning how to process all this. So if I'm getting something wrong, I get something wrong. Even our friends upstairs, they may look a little funny, but they're still human. It is honestly my belief in kind of trying to process everything that's happened so far that there's individuals like Elena Danaan and Danny Henderson and Alex Collier and Dr. Michael Sala. Part of their missions is to help show that something is out there. But there's going to be more and more individuals who have gone through hell, whose purpose is to help others down here be able to make that climb. It's funny because one of my grandmothers, I think my aunt said it was the same one. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look through some old messages. But one of my grandmothers, she was said to be able to talk to angels. I'll admit, with recent events, I don't think it was necessarily angels she was talking to. But even I thought she was crazy. But when I actually had a chance to speak with her, she would get information that was way too accurate. Like, how the fuck did she pick that up, you know? And when I even asked her about my daughter, she would say, yes, your daughter is out there. And so is her mother. And there are others too. They're out there. That's all she would say. They're out there, always watching over you. You said that part of my soul contract, what I had to put together in order to come down to Earth, Terra, Gaia, whatever you want to, name you want to use, that was to be a protector. I wanted to enlist in the military, but due to medical situations, that was highly ill-advised. Because just the slop they serve you in basic training would have kicked my ass. And there's medical records to prove that too. For those of you who are just damned and determined to stir shit up. Man, your lives must be boring. We'll move on. As far as when it comes to protecting people, it seems my wife and children picked up a similar image. There's been instances where I remember abducting people, taking them and examining them. For those of you who recall, Elena verified that I actually worked alongside Thorhan Iridian. This is something Thorhan has come forward and verified, and if you listen carefully during the times where Elena's been on with me and with me with Chris, you listen carefully to some of the voices that pop out of nowhere. There's a voice, you can hear what sounds like Thorhan's voice, as Elena describes it in her book, validating everything. Upstairs, my name was Alarian. I was a sort of scientist medical officer, but I did see combat. I was Lyrental. If I understand the timelines correctly, if I was involved in the Lyran Wars, I would have been a very small child. My family went to inhabit what would be known as Talihara. Then when I think it was out, I was out on some kind of patrol. I didn't immediately go with the Federation. When I was out one night, I honestly followed our political leaders on Talihara, the ones that signed over and aligned themselves with like the Nebu and Sikar. I was out one night on a bit of a military patrol, and that's where I saw the Sikar cornering those kids, and I snapped and started attacking it, helped break those kids away. Whether or not I was officially with the Federation or not, I'm not 100% sure. I'm still trying to work on that. Unfortunately, there's also a day job I have where I had to put things on pause just so I can still have some money coming in to make, gotta pay the bills. But when we left Talihara and I rescued those kids, that was what converted me all the way. My wife, I remember meeting her on that rescue. She was there waiting for me. There was something I was supposed to do, but we weren't expecting to find those kids. And I was going to be damned if I was going to leave them. I went home to check on my family after this attack took place, and I took off the Seacar's head. They already knew what I did. They were screaming at me. They were pissed that you asked me, why would you do such a thing? Why? And there was this male, I think he may have been my father, my soul father, if you will. He saw that I wasn't going to back down from what I did. He eventually was the one that says that I need to go. I need to get out of there as quickly as possible. Out of everyone that was there, he kept the most cool. He knew why I did what I did. And he also knew that he wasn't going to stir me away. That I was going to stick by what I did, even though I swore I saw the Seacar's eyes turn human as the head was coming off. And there was the stories that the Seacars, they weren't necessarily born, they were made, mutated, for lack of a better word. They were compromised individuals who were completely taken over. And that's how they came about, because there were even bigger and badder draconians out there that manipulated events, even more so than the Seacar. This is my understanding of what I've received. If Elena or any of them want to reach out and try to correct me or flag me down, if they think there's something's off, please, by all means, reach out. I don't want to present false information. I know that this is big, and being able to capture physical evidence can be difficult at times. Trust me, I'm half tempted to strap cameras to my head 24 hours out of the day just to see what happens. Hell, I want to build this. I have an idea for like this helmet that would be able to capture transmissions from implants. And I think it could actually be done fairly easily. Just remembering the type of equipment, the specific name of the equipment I have in mind. That's another situation. I'm not trying to stir fear mongering. It is my personal belief, even to this day, that if we're going to evolve, we have to remember the hard times, the hardships, the fear, the anger. We have to remember those sensations so we never lose the fire to make sure that the horrible tragedies never, ever happen again. We must remember that they were there, and more specifically, why they were there, so we can make sure it does not happen again. And we have to find some way to be able to teach young ones so that they can be prepared just in case something just like it happens, so they can be ready and they can take it on head first and come out victorious, so they can help evolve the people as a whole to even greater levels. Mistakes are made when things are rushed, when things are forgotten. And when the situation evolves into full-out war, you cannot afford to make mistakes or somebody's not coming home. If you do not believe my stories because they seem so exotic or strange, I understand. But I have proof to show that I have something happening, that something is taking place. And now, the bit I am most grateful for is that I've managed to find people that aren't necessarily not knowledgeable, yes, in what they talk about, but the fact that they actually try to actually know what they're talking about. It is a literal God's send, however you want to put it. Because now I've honestly been afraid to share this stuff because I know people are going to be assholes. And if it doesn't resonate with you or whatever, that's fine. If anything, that either shows you didn't listen, you're just being a jerk, or you're fortunate enough to not have been pushed to a point where suicide seems like the only way out. And by me sharing my story, it just me being saved by my family. Because it was not just supernatural related stuff like I mentioned during the Elena interview. My daughter tried to warn me of a car accident. For those of you who try to say, oh, he's psychotic, the grandma I mentioned that talks to angels, diagnosed as schizophrenic. And that news scared the shit out of me because I knew schizophrenia was genetic. I've gone to therapy sessions to get myself tested and evaluated and to try to work through personal issues. And when it came to talks of trying to figure out if I had schizophrenia, the therapist said, Dakota, I understand where their exact words were, I understand that why you would want to check this out, but I'm too coherent in what I'm saying. Yes, I kind of bounce around a little bit, but I was too coherent. Schizophrenia wasn't even a concern of theirs. They knew that I had something going on, and I was trying to do my best to figure out what it was. And thankfully, they were familiar with some of the programs. Yes, they may not be the best ones out there for information, but they were at least open to some of the ideas. So I can show that I have footage of craft flying outside of the house I was living in. The video that you saw on Elena's channel where it's a screen recording of me using the low light mode in a photo mode on my phone's camera. I moved away from the house, but there were still things that happened. I've tried getting it while I was here, but Every time I try to actually, sit outside, the fucking weather won't work with me. I'm not asking you to believe my story. And if you're someone who it does resonate with, and it gets you to stop and think before you do something to hurt yourself, mission fucking accomplished. That's all I care about. Yes, I've done movies and TV shows. I've even helped make video games, but that's just me trying out things, getting creative. Yes, there's some dark motherfuckers out there that use these to manipulate people. And yes, on my days off from my day job, I like to unplug up here for a minute and play on the Xbox. I'm not going to deny that. Just kind of gives me a chance to, breathe for a minute, unplug, but still engage. I'm not saying this stuff for fame or try to get empathy or anything of that. I don't want that. If I achieve fame, awesome. That'll help me link up with some even more people. If I achieve funding, awesome, great. I can. I don't want to give up my Cadillac, but unfortunately, that girl very may not have a few years left in her. You know, I want to simply help people get their stories out, and that's why with Bald and Bonkers, all the services we've put together, I've done my best to try to make sure they are as low cost and as accessible as possible. See, like one of the projects I'm working on now is kind of like a journal that helps walk you through how to focus on certain things, how to catalog incidents that you may be somehow supernatural or psychic or UFO or cryptid related. My plan is to get that out to as many different platforms just so people can find it. Maybe, they're not subscribed to the channel or haven't seen any of the interviews I've done over the years. They still have a better chance of finding it. With the films I'm trying to put together, same logic applies. That's why Bald and Bonkers show goes out to almost 60 platforms. It's because Chris and I, when we first started this gig, we had issues with assholes trying to shut us down and took episodes down because they didn't like what we were saying. So we spread the show out as far and wide as possible so that way you can be found. Even if one gets taken down for whatever reason may be the case, there's still more copies. Because what's important is getting the information out there. If you're in a situation where you're dealing with abuse, the second you're able to overpower and come out and talk about the abuse you've faced, that automatically takes away your abuser's power. And you can still want to cut off all ties and not deal with it, but still forgive them. Or maybe you just had some sort of story stuck in your head that you felt like you needed to write down, otherwise it wouldn't leave you alone. That's fine. Despite what people think, it's easier than ever these days to play in the elite's sandbox and build something for yourself to achieve your fucking dreams, regardless of the circumstances you ever may have felt in. There is no excuse. You can become better, help make people as a whole better. You got to get off your ass and try and not stir stupid shit up online. Internet and phones, technology has become so accessible to where we can phone up a friend who's lives in an entirely different country, entirely different time zones. We have access to countless research. And yes, there's suppressed information, but that's not the fucking point. We can't handle the technology we have here responsibly. Why should they give us the fancier toys like anti-gravity or the med beds? We are becoming such a society where we think enabling someone to indulge in drugs, to indulge in toxic behaviors and toxic relationships, that we think that is love. What is wrong with you? We have an amazing opportunity to become something better. And we have people who have shown that regardless of the bullshit we've done, the mistakes we've made, they're still there for us. Even if the people that have been told to be completely cut off because they're clearly associated with ass backward dark parties, they still have a chance to make something better of themselves that they just won't take. And yes, that is their call. But instead of focusing on that, why not do something better? Because if someone shows that they have the love, if anything, the situation with my family has shown is that if you are fortunate enough to have someone who cares about you so much that they're willing to literally come down and help you through some of the toughest times, no matter how much of an asshole you've been. I'll be honest, there's been points where I've almost become the abusive asshole. I swear against to this day, where I've almost let myself become engulfed in hatred and anger, where I've almost gotten physically violent with some people. And guess what? Apparently, the implants may have a shock collar function. Because someone physically made it to where there was this unbearable pain in my head and said, Dakota, knock your shit off now. Because they realized if I followed through with what I was about to do, I would not be able to become who I was meant to be. And I made amends to the best of my ability to everyone I've hurt. We reformed bridges where they could. It is possible to achieve redemption. And anybody is capable of it. But don't just give it out willingly. Make sure they show they're willing to fucking earn it. We have the greatest potential. So why are we choosing that potential to destroy? Everybody's got shit going on right now. Regardless if you don't believe in the whole we are all fractals of source. All right, let's focus on what's known with science. Humans have always been a type of pack animal. Travel in tribes. Yes, one person can maybe talented and gifted and able to do a lot of things. But you're able to do so much more with the right people. And when you allow people in. And yes, you're going to get stabbed in the back. It's how we learn. And people have their own reasons, their own journeys. And I've even slipped out a couple warnings to people I know who were going down some very dark paths. And they just got angry with me that I called them out. And that's fine. If you believe love is enabling self-destruction, then I am truly sorry for whatever screwed you up so bad. And know that you are loved. If anything, my family has taught me anything, is that love and hope will always find a way to power through shit. No matter how bad the situation may be, no matter how alone you feel in the world, love and hope will always power through. No matter how few or many people you trust, hope and love will always power through. The mind may be able to plan things and map things out, but it's the heart that always has a lasting impact. The mind may eventually forget why the ripples exist, but the heart will always find a way to keep beating out. It's a very powerful thing. Let's not abuse it. My name is Dakota Franson. And regardless of whether or not you believe what I say, change is coming. Are you really going to be that insecure about your own troubles to where you won't allow yourself and others to embrace it? You're not lost forever just because you decide to be a prick. You can turn yourself around, but you can't expect anybody to give you that handout. When you decide, the second chance is waiting for you. You just have to show you're willing to earn it. I love y'all.